You gotta help him. The words sliced through the lazy, humid air of Miami's Little Haiti, louder than the distant rattle of a passing freight train. They came not from an imposing figure, but from a pair of sun-baked, motorcycle-gloved hands gripping a stainless steel coffee cup. Downtown, the people moved with the predictable rush of commerce and heat, but here, in the neglected, dusty square anchored by a crumbling, forgotten fountain, time felt slow, heavy, and unforgiving. The focus of the quiet, yet insistent plea was a boy, no older than 8, small enough to disappear between the oversized planters, yet impossible to ignore. His name was T. Jean. He wore a faded, once white shirt and dusty shorts, and his eyes, wide and dark against his tired face, searched the sparse crowd with a desperate, silent urgency. He was on his knees, not in prayer, but because his small legs had clearly given out. Beside him sat a bright blue plastic bucket, its rim chipped and scratched, its surface reflecting the oppressive midday sun. He wasn't crying, yet. He was only pleading for water. Not with his voice, which was barely a whisper, but with a silent, profound look of exhaustion and thirst that was too raw for a child his age. The simple sight of his utter helplessness, framed by the indifferent concrete jungle, acted like a punch to the gut. The bucket, resting innocently at his side, held the secret to his terrible journey, a secret that hadn't been revealed, but whose presence was an anchor of inexplicable dread. A small, disjointed crowd began to form, drawn in by the palpable distress radiating from the little boy. There was Maria, a stoic, silver-haired woman running the nearby pastelito stand, whose usual gruff demeanor softened into a worried frown. Then there was Jax, the man with the motorcycle gloves, a former Marine now working construction, his face a road map of hard living and skepticism. He'd seen every scam and con, but something about T. Jean's stillness, the complete lack of theater, silenced his cynical warnings. The rest were typical passers-by, a young couple on their lunch break, a uniformed city sanitation worker taking a breather, and 2 uniformed police officers patrolling the district in their cruiser. The contrast was stark, the boy, a picture of absolute innocence and fragility, and the environment, the loud, unforgiving city square, its indifference baked into every cracked tile. When the police approached, Jax put his hand up, a preemptive gesture. "Hold up, officers. He's not causing trouble. He's just thirsty." One of the officers, a rookie named Davis, knelt down, his expression guarded but curious. He saw the sweat, the shaking hands, the absolute, undeniable need for hydration. But the other officer, older, harder, his name tag reading SGT, Rivera, kept his distance, his eyes fixed not on the boy, but on the brightly colored blue bucket. There was something about its placement, its deliberate proximity to the boy, that felt wrong, a silent challenge in the middle of a simple plea. The rising heat, the boy's focused energy, and the police scrutiny created a suffocating atmosphere of shared unease. T. Jean finally found his voice, a dry, cracked sound that barely cleared his throat. "Mwen Selman Bezwin DLO. Tanpri," he whispered in Haitian Creole, his plea for water becoming a plea for help. Jax, who understood the language, repeated it for the others. "He just needs water. Please." Sergeant Rivera, tired of the spectacle, spoke directly to the boy in a low, authoritative voice. "Kid, where's your mother? Where did you come from? Is that your backpack?" He pointed to the blue bucket, his tone implying suspicion. T. Jean flinched, pulling the bucket closer with surprising strength. He then did something completely unexpected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled, water-stained piece of paper. It wasn't a note or a map. It was a faded photo of a woman, clearly his mother, standing next to a makeshift hospital tent. Below the photo, scrawled in faint pencil in a shaky adult hand, were 2 words in French, "Laissez-le vivre." Let him live. The gravity of the message, the subtle plea for survival, hit them first. Then, T. Jean's story tumbled out in a painful mix of Creole and broken English. "Mommy, not here. She sent me across the water. Said run." His eyes darted to the bucket, which he now clutched like a treasure chest. This is why I am here. This is why I ran." He was not a runaway, he was a delivery, a desperate exile. The realization sank in, this small boy was a survivor of a clandestine journey, a silent witness to a trauma they couldn't begin to imagine, and the blue bucket was no mere accessory, it was the entire purpose of his terrifying voyage. Before Sergeant Rivera could press him for more details, a low, powerful engine rumble, stole the air. A dark, unmarked van, its windows tinted obsidian, crawled around the corner, its speed unnaturally slow, its movement deliberate. It wasn't the police, it was something worse. T-Gene saw it first. His small body tensed, and the look of exhaustion was instantly replaced by a stark, petrified terror. "Yola," he choked out, "they are here." Jax instantly recognized the danger. In his time, he'd learned the look of those who operate outside the law, those who hunt. The van was their vehicle. The silence of the occupants was their intent. Maria, the pastelito vendor, a veteran of community battles, moved first. "The back alley!" "Now," she hissed. The group protecting T-Gene, Jax, Maria, and the young couple formed a loose, desperate shield. Sergeant Rivera, though initially suspicious, saw the fear in the boy's eyes and the predatory glide of the van. He pulled his partner, Officer Davis, back. "That's not us, Davis. That's something else. We back off, call this in, and watch. If we engage now, they'll scatter and the kid's lost." The decision was agonizingly quick: protect the boy with their bodies, or expose the danger by involving official channels prematurely. Jax looked at T-Gene, then at the menacing van now idling near the square's edge. "Kid, who are they?" he whispered. T-Gene didn't answer with words. He held the blue bucket against his chest and, in a gesture of pure, desperate bravery, shook his head. He was refusing to trade the secret for his safety, knowing the contents of the bucket were more valuable, and therefore more dangerous, than his own life. The van's side door began to slide open, revealing a large, shadowy figure inside. The window for flight was closing. The confrontation was swift and brutal. As the figure, a tall, menacing man in a cheap suit, stepped out of the van, his eyes scanning the group, Jax acted. He shoved T-Gene behind Maria's stall, tossing his heavy leather jacket over the boy and the blue bucket, concealing them. "He's gone." "You're too late," Jax roared, stepping forward. The man, speaking in heavily accented English, didn't waste time. "The boy. The blue container. We know you have him. Give him up. This doesn't concern you." The intensity of the man's gaze, focused solely on the empty space where the boy had been, confirmed the true nature of their pursuit. He wasn't looking for a lost child, he was looking for property. A desperate, chaotic skirmish erupted. It wasn't a fair fight, it was a distraction. Jax, using his marine training, lunged, drawing the man's attention away from the stall. Meanwhile, Maria, realizing the man's focus was only on the bucket, made a move of inspired audacity. She grabbed a similar, empty plastic bin she used for trash and kicked it across the square toward the fountain. The movement drew the attention of the man's accomplice, who emerged from the van. It was a perfect feint, buying seconds. As the two men momentarily focused on the decoy, T-Gene made his move. He knew they were after the bucket, and he knew he had to protect it. He scrambled from behind the stall, holding his actual blue bucket tight, and in a voice no one thought he possessed, he shouted one word at the villains, a word of profound, shocking defiance, and "oh." His small voice cut through the chaos, proving he was not a victim, but a custodian. The police, seeing their opportunity, converged. Sergeant Rivera, witnessing the child's courage, abandoned his wait-and-see strategy. The shock of the little boy's scream, the confusion of the decoy, and the coordinated move by the officers proved too much. The villains, cornered and exposed, made a tactical decision. They scrambled back into the van and sped away, leaving the square in a stunned silence. The silence that followed the screech of the van's tires was absolute, broken only by T-Gene's ragged breathing. He was safe, for the moment. Jax and Maria rushed to him, checking for injuries. He was physically unharmed, but his fear was a raw, visible wound. The police took statements, securing the area and promising an all-points bulletin on the van, though everyone knew how easily a vehicle could vanish in the city's labyrinth. Sergeant Rivera, his demeanor completely changed, knelt before the boy. "Kid, you are safe now." But we have to know. What's in the bucket? What is so important they would risk all that for it? T. Jean, his small hand still gripping the handle, looked up, his eyes meeting the sergeant's. He slowly, deliberately, placed the bucket on the ground and began to lift the lid. The crowd, the police, the protective group, everyone leaned in, anticipating the expected: drugs, smuggled cash, perhaps jewels. Something valuable enough to warrant the confrontation. But the bucket did not contain contraband. It contained a few small, mud-caked cuttings of mangrove and basil, a handful of dry earth, and lying on top of the soil, a cheap, tattered, child's school exercise book. But it was the final object that delivered the crushing blow. Resting gently on the soil was a tiny, worn wooden cross, clearly handmade. T. Jean looked up, not at the onlookers, but at the sky. "My mother," she said, "the plants, they will grow here, so I can remember. And, in the water, it is to keep this safe." He gestured to the exercise book. When Maria gently opened the book, the entire square froze. The book was a detailed, meticulously hand-drawn census of the children who had perished in the recent earthquake, complete with small, labeled drawings of their favorite toys. The bucket was a portable cemetery, a memorial, a desperate promise of remembrance for the forgotten. What was in his bucket was not a prize for the villains, but the collective memory of the lost, a burden of grief so profound it forced the crowd to their knees, weeping. The immediate problem wasn't justice for the villains, it was shelter for the custodian of sorrow. T. Jean needed care, not a precinct bench. Jax, whose life had been one of calculated self-interest since leaving the service, surprised himself. "He's coming with me. Just for tonight." Maria, the gruff realist, shook her head. "No, Mijo. He needs a home, not a barracks. He stays with me. My apartment is small, but it is safe." Officer Davis, the rookie, offered to contact the Haitian consulate himself, bypassing the local bureaucracy, his faith in the system having been badly shaken. The improbable group, the skeptical Marine, the tough love vendor, and the young police officer, had spontaneously welded themselves into an unofficial, fierce-eyed tribe of T. Jean. The following weeks were a baptism by fire. Maria had to learn patience, replacing her usual sharp orders with soft Creole lullabies. Jax, the loner, found himself navigating the aisles of a children's shoe store, his massive hands awkwardly holding a size 2 sneaker. They fought over who would teach him to kick a soccer ball, who would help him translate his beloved census of the lost into English, and who was best suited to coax him through the nightmares that still haunted his nights. The bucket, now safely stored on a high shelf, became a sacred relic, a quiet reminder of his burden. T. Jean, in turn, began to crack the shell of their hardened hearts. He taught Maria the names of the tiny seeds he'd carried, turning her potted balcony into a miniature memorial garden. He showed Jax how to draw detailed, imaginative maps of the mythical land where the lost children now played. The core realization was this: they weren't just saving a child, they were rediscovering the forgotten, simple capacity to give unconditional, unselfish love. The informal arrangement couldn't last. A Child Protective Services, CPS, worker, Ms. Eleanor Vance, was eventually assigned to T. Jean's case, bringing the full weight of the state to bear. The emergency was over, the due process was beginning. The meeting was held in a sterile government office, a cold, clinical contrast to the warmth of Maria's apartment. Ms. Vance, professional and weary, laid out the facts. "Mr. Jax, Ms. Maria, you are not related. You have no legal standing. Your history, Mr. Jax, as a combat veteran with a discharge for minor disciplinary issues, and your, Ms. Maria, unlicensed food stand, present challenges. We appreciate your immediate compassion, but the system demands a stable, verifiable family unit. We will have to place him in a certified foster home." The debate became a brutal exchange on the meaning of family. Jax argued, "I was trained to protect. That's what I'm doing. We're a family built on need, not blood." Maria countered the definition of stability. "My life is messy, yes. But my heart is stable. We healed his hunger. Now we are healing his memory." The judge presiding over the temporary custody hearing, Judge Thompson, listened with a skeptical air. He saw a hardened Marine, an unlicensed vendor, and a traumatized boy. It looked like a recipe for disaster. Then, Judge Thompson addressed T. Jean. "Son, who are these people to you? And where do you want to go?" The courtroom held its breath. T. Jean, now wearing a simple, clean white shirt and shoes Jax had bought, walked to the witness stand. He didn't look at the judge or the lawyers. He looked at the faces of his new protectors. He spoke in clear, measured English, not the broken tongue of the square. "They are the ones who let me keep the bucket," he said, his voice ringing with a conviction that silenced the courtroom. "They know the names. They know the lost. If I go, the names will be forgotten. They are my remembrance keepers." He then looked directly at the judge. "I need them to help me finish the book. They are my family now." His testimony was not a child's wish, it was a devastating moral appeal that demanded the court acknowledge the sacred nature of his mission and the authentic bond that had been forged in the crucible of fear and shared grief. Judge Thompson made his ruling, his voice thick with uncharacteristic emotion. The court cannot ignore the evidence of a profound and protective bond. The life this group has given this child is not one of convenience, but of purpose. The court finds in favor of the petitioners. The courtroom erupted in a quiet but powerful gasp of relief. T. Jean, the weary traveler, had finally reached his permanent destination. Jax and Maria, tears streaming down their faces, officially became T. Jean's temporary co-guardians, pending a permanent adoption process. The tribe of T. Jean had won. The celebration wasn't a party, it was a quiet dinner at Maria's apartment, with plates piled high with pastelitos and Maria's famous black beans. That night, Jax helped T. Jean finally plant the cuttings from the blue bucket into a proper garden box. The bucket, washed clean, was placed on a shelf of honor. The three of them, an unlikely, unconventional family, sat on the small balcony, watching the city lights flicker. They were bound not by blood, but by a blue bucket containing the history of the lost and a shared future of remembrance. T. Jean had found a home, and in doing so, he had given the hardened people who saved him a renewed purpose, to love, to remember, and to never turn away from true, silent suffering again. The pain remained, but it was now shared, and in sharing it, it became bearable. 2 years later, the Little Haiti square is transformed. It's no longer a place of dusty indifference. Jax, Maria, and T. Jean, now 10 years old, stand proudly beside a vibrant, community-built Garden of the Lost, a small, circular park where the broken fountain once stood. The garden is filled with basil, mangrove, and brightly colored tropical flowers, tended by volunteers. At the center is a permanent stone bench, inscribed with the words, "Remembrance Keepers," for the children who cannot speak. T. Jean, no longer frail, is a confident, bright-eyed boy who excels in school. He is the quiet, eloquent public face of the Blue Bucket Project, a non-profit founded by Jax and Maria, with legal help from Officer Davis, that provides emergency shelter and educational assistance for unaccompanied minor asylum seekers in South Florida. The exercise book, now laminated and professionally bound, is a centerpiece of their small office, its contents a powerful, living testament. Jax, having finally quit construction, runs the project's logistics, his skepticism replaced by a fierce, focused compassion. Maria, having used her pastelito profits to fund the first shelter, manages the community outreach, her tough exterior a shield for the vulnerable children she now mothers. They are a family, unconventional, loud, and messy, but fundamentally whole. The initial desperation for water became a thirst for justice, and the secret in the bucket became an inspiration for an entire community. The movement is growing, a steady current of hope against the tide of indifference. The final lesson, delivered by a small, 8-year-old boy on a scorching Miami day, echoes in the heart of the community, now a beacon for those in need. The heaviest burdens, Jax often tells new volunteers, repeating the lesson T. Jean taught him, are not carried by the strongest shoulders, but by the truest hearts.